All right, we got to listen to some slow jazz there. Thanks, Cameron. Welcome everybody to the Healthy Self Podcast. I am your host today, Cade Archibald, and Reagan Archibald. He's not able to join us today. He's actually in the air right now, headed to my location in St. George. So I'm really excited for today's show. And today's guest, really excited. I'm going to introduce her in just a moment. But before we do that, just want to cover a few announcements. We had a really cool hack program last night, Health Accelerator course. If you're not involved in that yet, make sure you do get on our site at acueastwest.com/hack. That's HAC, stands for Health Accelerator Challenge or course. So we had a few different challenges last night, and Dr. Heather, you might really like these. So we asked everybody to get some baseline VO2 max. There's a few different ways you can test that through your heart rate, walking a mile, and then testing your heart rate, and then do some challenges with how long you can hold a plank, how many push-ups you can do uninterrupted, and that can start at wall push-ups down to full-blown push-ups. Balance on one foot with your eyes closed. That one's a challenging one. For some of our listeners, get a spotter, and then squats. So same with squats is get a full range of motion on your squats without hurting your knees. So hopefully everybody's diving into those challenges. And so I'm going to introduce our guest today. So really excited to have her on, Dr. Heather Smith Fernandez, medical doctor. She's board certified anesthesiologist and a fellowship trained interventional pain and regenerative medicine physician. She's also the founder of Peptology, which I really dig this, and we're going to have to dive into that. Trademark set of protocols for clinical application of peptides in specific areas of clinical practice. Dr. Heather graduated in the first ever class of physicians trained and certified in peptide medicine by A4M, and has been conducting clinical research in the field of peptides, especially combined with regenerative procedures since 2015. So really, really rad stuff you're working on. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we're excited, and I'm just really excited about what you're working on. We've got involved in peptides a couple years ago, and been in regenerative medicine for many years in our clinics. And yeah, I think we saw kind of what you were doing and really fascinated by that. So tell me a little bit about your background. How did you get into peptides and regenerative medicine?
Well, as my origin story it's just this winding road, like most of us who end up in this truly preventative mindset and health space. I was fortunate to actually have regenerative medicine training, like PRP. That was really all we had available to us. Prolotherapy, which is the
Yeah.
fundamentals, if your audience doesn't know what that is, we can talk about that in a minute. Which is still effective and still being used today. In my fellowship, so I was so fortunate because it really wasn't a buzzword, or nobody was really talking about it so much back then, except in these pockets of people who were in regenerative medicine. So when I was at University of Florida, I did my fellowship in interventional pain management, but my fellowship director introduced us to the regenerative medicine concepts, how to actually work on the body to get a regenerative medicine response in both prolotherapy and with PRP. And so I started young, so to speak, with the idea of we don't always have to just throw a steroid on this. We can, sometimes actually get the body, help the body to heal. And why doesn't the body always heal tissues? And that's what started to lead me down, understanding all the little components, biochemically, kind of in that nerdy
Yeah.
way, of all the things that have to happen at the tissue level in order for the tissue to really have the best healing chance it can. And that's where I actually started learning about hormones at the same time as peptides, because we had only available to us really at that time was IGF-1, which is
Yeah.
insulin like growth factor 1. And what IGF-1 is if you growth hormone pulses out multiple times per day. And capturing growth hormone is really hard because it pulses and then it metabolizes and it becomes other things. But IGF-1 is a stable metabolite of growth hormone. And so as growth hormone is being metabolized, it goes back out into the body and hits all these specific receptors for IGF-1. And it's extremely what we call proliferative and healing. And it has all these amazing things that it does at the level of the tissue, including waking up some of your sleeping stem cells and getting them to start participating in the healing response. So IGF-1 as a peptide just by itself was available to us. And I started utilizing that along with the regenerative procedures and we were getting good results before I started, working with some of these things, but we're getting better results and faster results when I started using the peptides. And that's how I kind of started learning about hormones because I wasn't trained as a hormone doctor at all
Yeah.
at that time. But what I found was I'd have two patients who were very similar age, gender, problem that I was dealing with. And one would just get fantastically better. And the other one would have more of a lackluster response. I started thinking, why is this person not doing as well as this person? And started, in the regenerative community, we would talk about this a little bit, but it wasn't really out there that patients who were hormone optimized did a lot better consistently across the board. And then understanding, why is testosterone so important for the healing response? Because we didn't really have that education in a formal medical training. And so it became this whole journey of, I want to make sure that everybody has the chance to get this optimal response. So that's how I went down the hormone pathway, and I was working with IGF-1. And because I was one of the early adopters with peptides and I saw how just amazing this could be, as the new peptides started coming in, I just fell in love with peptide medicine.
Yeah, that's amazing. So in your well, and I'm pretty impressed. When was your fellowship? Because the fact that you were getting into PRP and some introduction even to regenerative medicine is pretty cool.
Yeah, that was 2007.
Yeah, because that's like some groundbreaking stuff then.
It
So
was.
that you were an innovator like before even regenerative medicine's kind of been around since 2007, 2009. And
Yeah,
so you're
exactly.
right on the pioneer
I
groundbreaking
was,
of that.
and I
That's
became a
cool.
believer and a patient too. So my fellowship director, I was a patient just like everybody has had
Yeah.
things that had to be treated, and she helped me with regenerative medicine. I had had headaches most of my life, and a lot of young women have headaches, and we're always told, well, it's probably hormones or it's probably something else,
Yeah.
and a lot of times headaches can be coming from the neck. And I had had sports injuries and probably not the best connective tissue. I had a lot of flexibility, but that doesn't survive against injury very well when you're super
Yeah.
flexible. So I had, she, examined me. The physical exam is so important. And she examined me and she said, no, you've got ligament instability in your neck. That's what's causing all of this. And she treated me. I became her patient and I couldn't believe it. I got better. My headaches went away. I didn't wake up with this, headache every morning that was just kind of, that's there. It's not, you just kind of live with it. They were gone. And my neck was
That's
more stable.
beautiful.
And so that was all those many years ago. And I'm a walking billboard for regenerative medicine. I've had lots of body parts treated and I've treated myself. And I love it. Then when we add peptides in with that, it's just this amplified response and this overall, the body starts turning over old stuff much faster. It
Yeah.
starts cleaning out the junk. The peptides really help with that. So I know I'm so nerdy. I get so excited about it though.
Yeah. And peptides, that's the fascinating thing is how because even with hormones, you can overdo hormones. You can really, you can optimize someone or you can jack someone up with the wrong or right kind of hormones. And
Yes,
so
sir.
the beautiful thing about peptides, I not necessarily seeing that happen in most cases. You can overuse them, but it's a waste more or less because they have a diminishing return in most of
Yes.
those instances. But tell me, what's kind of your favorite go-to peptides, and tell us a little bit about those.
Well, My list was longer before we lost access to some of them,
Oh, yes.
but we're still working on that. I want to give everybody hope that we've had some challenges, and have you? I don't know if you've talked about what happened with the FDA and kind of where we are with that, but the FDA changed the definition of what a peptide is, which really took away a lot of our compounders' ability to make them. So a peptide has been considered 50 amino acids, or less. And for years in multiple countries, I mean, this is kind of widespread accepted definition of what a peptide is, and everything over 50 amino acids would be considered a protein, essentially. And there's some variation on that, and not everybody agrees about that, but that's been kind of the accepted definition of a peptide. Well, our FDA has decided that now a peptide is less than 40 amino acids, and they
Yeah.
have their reasons, I'm sure, for making that decision. They haven't really publicly shared that with us, but if a peptide is less than 40 and anything over that requires an IND and all these other regulatory permissions to be able to study them and make them, then a lot of the peptides fell off the ability to be able to be made in the country for now. So we're still working at getting some of our favorite ones back. I just want to say that because you'll see some of the peptides. I have a little gift that I want to give people so that they can see all of the different things that can actually be helped with peptides safely. Very exciting stuff. And so
Love
some of
it.
them we're still trying to get back on the market. But
Yeah.
that was a really long answer, and I didn't actually answer your question yet. But I actually love
That's
BPC
all right.
157 is
Yeah.
probably still my favorite peptide. BPC, body protective compound 157, is just, this peptide is so incredible, and it hasn't been in the literature really that long. It's fairly new, but there's a lot of study that's been done about it since it was really kind of discovered, and it's an isolate from our own gastric juice. So how safe is that? And it's
Isn't it so
stable in
cool?
gastric juice. You can take it orally. So amazing. And I've had this plethora of positive results with BPC 157 for so many different things. And the safety of it is just, I mean, even in super, super high doses, no toxicity. And that's been shown really well in the studies as well as in clinical practice. So that's probably still, it works for pain. It helps with all the gut issues, which then help with inflammatory issues and
Yeah.
autoimmune issues, brain, just
It
healing all
really
these
is
tissues that
like
are hard to
a
heal.
it's a linchpin when it comes to peptides because it's like got the cascading effect where it can affect your digestive system. It gets people out of
Yeah.
pain. Um, really, really awesome stuff. Yeah, love BPC. That's great. Is so some of the more recent. I just want to circle back on the what peptides have been taken off the market. Now, it's Tesmarelin that was
Yeah.
that was the big one that was too many. Is that like 53 or 43? It was just too many amino acid chains long, and so is
There's
that why
been
that was taken off?
No, tesamorelin actually is still, it's FDA approved under the name of eGrifta. It is very, very hard to make. There's only a couple places actually in the world that make
Ah,
tesamorelin. It's very difficult to make. The compounders were able to offer tesamorelin at a significantly reduced price. I just actually looked this up recently for a patient of mine. Brand name tesamorelin is FDA approved for 1 month. The price is about $6,000
whew,
for 1 month of
holy
testosterone.
smokes!
So
Yeah,
not a lot of us can afford that. But they're looking, there's a possibility that the compounders that have the ability to make it will be permitted to when it's able to be made by generic. That's not going to happen probably for another year. And we're hoping, that will be an
ah, that's
option, at
right.
least for some people. Yes. But
Okay, I
cerebral lysin,
remember. Yeah.
cerebral lysin
I
is
was
one of
just gonna
those.
say.
Yeah, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Cerebral lysin is one of our favorite peptides for cognitive, for concentration, for memory, for brain injury, for everything to do really with health of the brain that was too big to be able to be made anymore. And we lost that one. And I think there was a couple of other reasons. There was a few other things that the FDA changed, but that's been one that we've really missed as peptide doctors for our patients. And our patients really miss that one. So we're hoping that we'll be able to do whatever studies they need us to do an IRB, then, apply for
Yeah.
an IND with some hopefully financial help, because all those things are really expensive, to get cerebrolysin back in the mainstream. So that was probably one of the biggest ones we lost. An injectable BPC we can't do anymore, which is really a bummer, because I used a lot of injectable BPC. But the good news is BPC is now what's called a peptide nutraceutical, which is kind of a new category in nutraceuticals. It qualified under all of the definitions to be a peptide nutraceutical, and we know that it's super stable. It can be taken orally and is absorbed systemically by oral administration. So that's exciting. But I miss the injectable PPC, and copper GHK is another one. I miss the injectable on that.
Yeah. Well, great. So BPC is one of your go-to favorites. What about yourself? Do you use what do you have like your own stack or combo of peptides that you like to use for yourself?
I sure do. I have, I tend to cycle because I'm kind of a small person and my real estate gets a little tender. So I'll use
Oh yeah.
peptides. Even though there are some that can be used continuously, like thymosin alpha 1, I tend to cycle just so that I can give myself a rest. I love CJC ipamorelin combination. For those of you that are familiar with that, that's another one that unfortunately we are not able to get in the United States right now, but we're working on that as well. Sermorelin is also a growth hormone releasing hormone, so it's in the same grouping as CJC. It's not quite as potent, but it is FDA approved and still available. Um, I have my older supply of CJC that I'm still using right now, but I will convert to sermorelin as I'm able to do that. And the thymosin alpha 1, thymosin beta 4, BPC 157. I used to use the deep sleep inducing peptide, DSIP, about 3 times a week,
Oh,
just to get that
nice.
big deep wave sleep a couple nights a week. And I do cycle pentosan polysulfate, which isn't technically a peptide, but it's a small molecule that behaves like a peptide. And that's one that we still have available to us, and we don't see that disappearing for us at all. And Pentosin is probably the most amazing peptide substance that is not very well known. I mean, the research on Pentosin is incredible, that it's actually given intramuscularly. You don't even have to put it in the joint. It helps the body to regrow articular cartilage, the cartilage that lines the joint, that is so hard to get that to actually restore. Normally, if we do damage to cartilage, there's a different kind of cartilage, like a hyaline cartilage. It's more like a scar that forms there that's not the same, but it actually helps articular cartilage, the real one that you were born with, to regrow. It actually reduces the breakdown of cartilage, and it cleans out some of I don't want to get too technical, but there's chemicals that are in an inflamed joint or an arthritic joint that are kind of
Yeah.
worsening that process and making it hurt and damaging the lining, which is the synovium. It reduces the production of all of those, all in one injection. So that's
And
one of
so
my
you
favorites.
it's injected intermuscularly or interarticularly?
Intramuscularly. Intramuscularly.
Wow.
Some of the animal studies that they initially did were done intraarticularly, but what they started doing them intramuscularly, and they found we were having the same outcome. And I've clinically had the same outcome doing intramuscularly. I've had some incredible turnarounds for patients who were basically told they needed a joint replacement and nothing else would help them. And it's just an amazing substance. And you use it as a course. So you're not using it, it's like twice a week intramuscular for a certain period of time. And you can do that a couple times a year, which is actually doable for most people.
Yeah.
It's
No,
awesome. I
that's
love it.
amazing. So are you typically combining that with some sort of regenerative treatment as well? It sounds like that
I
is
like to do it.
regenerative, but
It is. So I've had some excellent results with doing a course of peptides. Even if the patient doesn't want to keep doing peptides ongoing for whatever reason, it's usually a financial decision, because people love the way they feel on peptides. But
yeah.
everybody, they can don't use their dollars for this for so long. But around a regenerative procedure, you have the opportunity, while the body is in healing mode, to really take advantage of these substances that are inducing specific procedures, like in working on the cartilage, working on modulating that inflammation, the bad kind of inflammation, not the healing kind of inflammation. So I like doing the whole course around the procedure, as and then if a lot of times we'll have patients say, I want to keep doing that, or they want to do it
Yeah.
ongoing. But I'm very
Beautiful.
sensitive to everybody, we're all financially constricted to a certain degree. So
Yeah.
we try to get the best out of the for me, I like to cycle. I'll do peptides for either a month or a 3-month course, and then I usually will take a break.
Awesome. Great. Well, and that's so I I'm very familiar with all those except that it's Pentosin. What was the name? I got to write that down and do a little extra
Sure.
research
It,
myself on that.
it's Pentosin polysulfate. And if you look in the literature, if you like looking at those nerdy studies like I do, there's a sodium pentosan polysulfate and a calcium. But what they found was they both actually worked at both equally well. But yeah, pentosan polysulfate. And it's
That's
been used
awesome.
overseas. Actually, there's several anecdotal comments that there are clinics, in Germany and overseas that don't use steroids anymore. They're using Pentosin, and they're getting this just tremendous, decrease in inflammation without damaging the joint, with actually repairing the joint. So it's
Yeah,
it's it's an awesome tool to have in your toolbox.
that's so cool. Yeah, it's because sometimes, those steroids can be helpful to reduce the inflammation quickly, so but they do have some side effects to them, and so that's awesome to find something that can be that powerful as well as not have the side effects. That's like you get a you get a you get your cake and eat it too. That's beautiful.
I know. I mean, I
Um,
have I have some patient stories that would just blow your mind. If we have time at the end, I'll share some with you. So,
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, um let's talk a little bit. I know, and if anyone we have our listeners here on the webinar, we also have them on the radio show. But if anyone here on the webinar has any questions, type them into the chat box, and we'll make sure we can answer those. If you have anything for Dr. Heather at any time, I know a lot of our patients sleep is a big thing, and that's so we do very similar work when it comes to how we approach a patient's health. We at our clinics we have regenerative medicine. We do a lot with blood work and optimizing hormones, digestive health, all those things while we're doing these regenerative treatments. So I love what you're doing. I think it's super innovative, collaborative, but on the sleep side, that's one like any regenerative treatment, like that's where your stem cells are in your body rejuvenating is when you sleep, but that's how you recover. So
mhm.
talk a little bit about Dsip. I've never used Dsip. I love CJC Impermelin. I like to add in IGF-1. That's one of my favorites, especially just like feel like my workouts are so much more powerful. And I actually sleep really good with that. I know Reagan's done use Dsip, but tell me a little bit about that, how that works.
Well, the deep sleep inducing peptide is working in an area in the brain. There's actually multiple mechanisms in the brain that have to really be working well in order for you to get to sleep and to stay asleep and to have all the cycles of sleep that you want. Um, Most people who struggle with sleep either struggle with getting to sleep or staying to sleep. It's rarely both of those things, unless there's just a lot of poor sleep hygiene with lights on and TVs on, and or eating late, or things like that. But the DSIP, when we measure deep sleep, like there's different sleep monitors, there's the Apple Watch, and there's a certain kind of Fitbit. I think I have an Aura ring that I prefer because I don't like anything buzzing and zapping on
Yeah,
me while I'm,
love the
especially while I'm
Aura
trying to do
Ring.
procedures on patients and things. So, but there's different forms of sleep monitors that will tell you where you're lacking, and for a lot of us, it's within deep sleep. That you're only getting 19 minutes or 20 minutes, and you should be getting a little over an hour of deep sleep, and that's really that restorative sleep. So DSIP, it's not recommended to use it every day, even though some of us would like to. um, but you can get desensitization to it if you use it too frequently. So, but if you've had a couple nights in a row where it just hasn't been right, or if you have people that have little kids will wake you up throughout the night. It's just part of being a parent, or sometimes it's a pet. And that you just need to start recovering that sleep using DSIP on kind of that regular. I don't use it more than 3 times a week. Some people do use it a little more than that, but DSIP is really good for that. And it does, I've never seen it have side effects. I've never had side effects from it. I've never seen any of my patients have side effects from it. You know, it's only like a 10 to 20 unit dose. I've had some people use 30
Yeah.
units, but it doesn't seem to make a big difference. Anytime, you know, from 20 to 30 doesn't seem to make a big difference. And then, like you said, you're just wasting your peptide.
Yeah.
And it's not hurting you, but you're going to run out sooner. But DSIP is one of those that also doesn't have a lot of recognition. Another thing for sleep, I agree with you. The CJC and ipamorelin is the best combination for sleep, especially if you're using it, you know, where it's 90 minutes, you haven't eaten anything, things like that. It works. It really makes a big difference if you eat right before bed or you have a glass of wine or something right before bed. It can really interfere with its ability to really help you. And I think sometimes patients forget that, you know, they like, oh,
Oh
it hasn't
yeah.
been 90 minutes. And if you do the 90 minutes and you don't have anything, you know, to eat, it can really be beneficial. Another one that I like, well, see now, so without CJC ipamorelin, we have sermorelin, that's combined with glycine. So glycine was studied independently to actually help a growth hormone release. And it also started putting the brain to sleep in some of those capacities as well. So that combination is really nice to use at night. It's not as powerful as CJC and ipamorelin, but it is still worth trying, especially if sleep is something you struggle with. But another one that's my favorite is Epitalon. I don't know if you had any experience with Epitalon,
I,
but that is by far one of my, you know, it's on the top 5 for me of favorite peptides, because it has so many different things that it does. But Epitalon, when used, especially when used with either CJC or sermorelin, it's incredible the quality of sleep that you get. And for those of us that have a hard time falling asleep, it really makes a difference. So that's
yeah.
another, you know,
That's one that
sleep is so
I'm
important. I agree
currently
with
cycling, or I'm currently doing Epitalon. Love Epitalon, and you actually know that we had Allison was asking to if you'd talk a little bit about Epitalon. So perfect. What so I know Epitalon works on the HPA axis. It's also a
you.
telomerase, right?
It does. So it lengthens telomeres, and it's been shown to do that in more than one study. But one of the things that it has these amazing, it has multiple actions in the brain. And in my opinion, it's one of the true anti-aging or preventative peptides. It sensitizes the hypothalamus to the effect of your own hormones, or if you're getting hormone optimization. So you're getting a bigger bang for your buck with your hormones. You're actually getting a better response. There's also activity with the pineal gland, and there's activity with the production of dopamine. So there's so many processes, and those are only the ones that we know about. It has this incredible um, pleiotropic activity. It's like it has all these different sites of action that are all positive towards restoration. So and again, no side effects. I've not seen any, I've not experienced any side effects with using reasonable doses. There's no reason to use a lot of Epitalon. There is an Epitalon that we were working on trying to get it in a nasal spray, because trying to keep it kind of available to us, but I'm not sure that's going to be able to happen. A lot of people ask, I don't know if they've asked you this too, but why can't we use more peptides in a nasal spray? And it's because the enzymes that are in the nasal mucosa just destroy the peptides. It's very hard to get a peptide that doesn't get broken down by those enzymes. C-Lank and C-Max were 2 that actually were not broken down, but we don't have very many that aren't. I would love to see Epitalon as a nasal spray, though. I think that'd be
Yeah,
great.
it is way easier, and especially for patients that don't want to poke themselves, it's a lot more comfortable. Um, I- so we had a question going back to the Pentosin. What dosage are you using for Pentosin intermuscular injections twice a week?
It's actually weight based, so it's 2 milligrams per kilogram. That's the recommended dose. I've not gone above that. I don't see any reason to. Some of the things about Pentosin, one of the other things about it is it was originally developed for a really painful bladder condition called interstitial cystitis. And when they first brought Pentosin to the market, they brought it in an oral form. But I don't recommend the oral form because the only negative side effects that have been seen with Pentosin that in the literature were with the oral form. And there were some patients, not many, but some who developed this weird retinopathy in their eyes. But it never happened with the injectable form, only the oral form. So because I do get asked that too. I don't ever use the oral form because the injectable has not had any of that happen. So it's 2 milligrams per kilogram twice a week, usually for about 5 weeks. That's usually the course for one course. And most patients, I'm probably giving you more information than you want to know about this, but most of the time people start feeling better at about week 3. So tell them to hang in there. It's not like a steroid where it's going to work right away, but they usually really start noticing the difference right around week 3, most patients.
That's awesome.
Did that answer that?
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, that was great answer. So Epitalon, great anti-aging peptide. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So what, let's see. Yeah, thank you is what they said for getting more into those details. So um, let's talk a little bit. So you mentioned thymosin beta 4, um,
Yes.
and then thymosin alpha. We've talked in a lot, especially in the current, the last year. Thymosin alpha has been something that we've talked a significant amount on, and then thymosin beta 4. That's one of mine for I love that just for recovery. So if I'm working out a
Yes.
lot, lifting a lot, it's like magic when it comes to not being sore all the time.
It
That's what I've
is.
noticed.
It's incredible. Yeah, and for the other thing about thymosin beta 4 is it's also one that can be given IV. So if there was,
Oh
for
wow.
anyone who with a brain injury or any kind of a head injury, even if it doesn't look like it's a major head injury, what we're learning now, especially with younger people, minor head injuries can have significant downstream consequences. So it's never really, in my book, never a minor head injury. When you clunk your head, a lot of things can start going wrong, down the road. Thymosin beta 4, if you have a significant head injury, we can give that actually IV, and it's incredibly powerful to help recover. It's also really good before and after a surgery. If you're having surgery and you want to give your
Oh yeah.
body that big chance of healing, because there's a gene in our body that actually gets activated at the moment of injury. It's the first peptide to be upregulated, meaning your body's going to produce more of that by genetic code at the moment of injury. So it's really part of our natural healing phenomenon to have that thymosin beta 4. I love that peptide. And I tend to use it in little higher doses than what I've seen others using it in. The safety profile is incredible. It's a bioidentical peptide. It's something that our body makes.
Love
So
it.
I'm agree with you. I love it.
So I'm really curious on the IV side of things. I've heard of that. We've never administered that. What kind of dosages are you doing for the IVs? Is it like,
I tend to use 3,000 micrograms. I'll use a higher dose if it's a serious head injury. But I like the 3,000 microgram dose, and it's a slow, it's a slow IV push. You don't put it in a bag. You just do it like you would do glutathione if you're
oh,
going to do
okay,
it
so
IV.
it's a push, and that's amazing. Do you ever add it in with like a Myers or a vitamin bag, or you just add it in as a push?
No, I don't want it to get broken down.
Yeah,
I know that they can be sensitive. So I just keep it nice and pure, and I don't mix it in with
beautiful,
anything. Yeah.
beautiful. No, that's awesome. We
Yeah.
got all sorts of innovations here. Some really cool stuff. Hey, so I wanted to circle back on the cerebral lysing. I was taking that
Mhm.
peptide as they were taking it off the shelves. If I remember right, is the main reason I know it's isn't there a pharmaceutical that's working on like mass producing it as a
That
brain
could
or
be. You mean like an FDA approved in the pharmaceutical
yeah,
business? That's probably true. I mean, the pharmaceutical companies have been spending a tremendous amount of money in developing peptides, whether it's for cancer, whether it's for cardiovascular, um, neurologic. It would be great if they would spend a little bit more effort on them, because we've got an awful lot of people who are suffering with some form of a mild cognitive impairment, or things that make them not be able to live independently. That's not
Yeah.
good. Outside of fulminant Alzheimer's, there's a lot of cognitive decline, and that's one of the things that sucks the joy out of the life for people, is when they're at a certain age and they can't remember names, and then they start getting self-conscious, and then they don't want to socialize. All of those things have such a negative domino effect. So keeping people so that they can manage their own checkbook, so that they can remember things, so that they can keep all their processes intact, is really great. And cerebral lysin is just fantastic at that. So
Yeah.
if the pharmaceutical industry is going to bring it to market, hopefully it'll be affordable for everybody.
I'm
It would
sure
be
at first they want to recoup all their investment.
yeah.
All right,
So,
cool.
but
So
yeah, it's a peptide that we should definitely keep on the radar.
have you ever used for some of our patient, we've used it's cerebropeptin. It's the a frag through
Oh,
integrated peptides through Dr. Holtorf's line. Have you ever
no, I
used
have not
those
used
at
that
all?
one.
Yeah,
Nope,
so
I
we've
have not.
similar. So it's a frag of the cerebral lysine, and you can actually go to integratedpeptides.com and look up some of those options there. I think.
Okay.
Anyways, and that's. Oh, thank you, Shelly. Shelly, you must
I
be on
know
it.
that that's where a
Cerebro
lot
Pep,
of.
and it's
Oh,
the
nice.
cerebral
Okay,
lysine.
I wonder.
It's a frag, so
It's a fragment
just
of it.
a
That's
oral.
It's oral. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I know that that's the direction that a lot of the peptide, manufacturers are trying to go in. And what I've seen, like with the thymosin beta 4 fragment, is that it's safe. It's just kind of like what we're dealing with is just a little less potent. So
Yeah, less
it takes
potency.
longer. You have to do more. Yeah. So the
Have to
potency
have a
is
little
just not quite.
patience
But
with it.
yes, but it's still, especially if you have any family history or things like that of cognitive impairment, or any form of dementia, especially if the onset was early in family members, those are really good things to be, protecting your brain with.
Beautiful. Awesome. So tell me this. I'm a little curious. Sounds like you're super innovative in the regenerative medicine and peptide world. What is without violating HIPAA, obviously, but what's like the
Okay.
most like one of the coolest procedures you've done, or that you really enjoy doing, that's a little more novel to share with our audience? I'm just curious. Sounds like you do
Well,
some really cool stuff. I'm just wondering if you have like a
yeah,
favorite one in the
I
back of your
do.
head.
Probably the favorite, I have two favorites, I think, which is kind of surprising because I love treating spine. That was my original training, was all in spine. And I love taking people's headaches away and making their neck functional like what I did with mine. But I think one of my more exciting things to treat, a great surgical option. And these people either get better with regenerative medicine, or they just suffer, literally suffer for years and years and years, are tennis elbow tears, like the real tear. And for any of you who've had tennis elbow, lateral epicondylitis, it is so disruptive for your day. You can't hold things, you can't like hold anything in that hand, and it just
No, it's
burns and
awful.
hurts. And if it's a little tendonitis, it can get better with a lot of conservative means. But if there's a big tear there, it can be one of those things that just becomes chronic, and it's awful. No longer you using that arm for sports, let alone holding a coffee cup with it. And I've had such great success actually healing those back to 100% with people, even if they've had it for almost a year. And that is just so satisfying to be able to give somebody that ability to just hold something in that hand again, let alone play tennis or
Yeah.
anything that uses that arm. And the other is knees. We where I live, we have a lot of people who, I'm in Southwest Florida, so people want to be active, they want to be outside. And patients who have been told, or they've already had scopes and now they're told, well, there isn't anything else we can do for your knees. That's just a terrible thing to tell somebody. And we've had I've had tremendous
Yeah.
success in turning around a knee that just everybody said it's hopeless. There's nothing that can be done for it. And that's, again, just wonderful because you're giving the patient, the patient hurts all the time. They don't do anything, they don't walk, and they just do nothing because it just hurts and it clicks and it locks, and it's, be able to get that knee functional again. That's just fantastic. So these kind of dramatic where, oh my gosh, they didn't think anything could be done. Everybody's told me nothing can be done. And then all of a sudden they're back to doing everything that they did before without knee pain. That's fantastic. So
Yeah, and that is the coolest, and I would say that's the reason why, people get into medicine is just that feeling and that seeing how someone recovers from some of those injuries where they've been told by traditional medicine and kind of the traditional system that there's just gonna have to live with it, and it's so exciting to see those people get their lives back on track. It's
it is.
amazing.
I mean, it just really is. It's just you feel so honored to be able to help somebody in that way. And that, now they just, their whole life, they look at it differently. And that's just fantastic. I feel so lucky when, I have that
It's
opportunity.
beautiful thing. So Ray asked, what are there any peptide, or you're not using specific peptides, or maybe a combo, but what peptides do you use for tennis elbow is what he asked, or is that more of just a
Well,
regenerative treatment?
it's more of a, if there's actually a tear, I really want to get in there and get some cells in there, or a super concentrated PRP with IGF-1. I actually had a really nice injectable mix with BPC 157, GHK copper, IGF-1, a few other things that are fantastic to inject in tissue, but we don't have those injectables anymore. We still have IGF-1. So I prefer to do it that way, but if you're going to use peptides only, I would definitely be focused on the TB4 in higher doses, and BPC 157. And if you have your TB4 that's injectable, you can inject it in that general area. I don't recommend using only a subcutaneous needle.
Yeah,
Don't use a longer needle if you're not skilled with that, because you can actually damage the tissue. But that's what I would suggest doing. But I think if you don't know if you have a tear, make sure you get an MRI so that you know if you have a tear there, and you can save yourself a lot of agony by getting a really good regenerative procedure done there. So if you have
yeah,
tennis elbow, I hope you get it repaired. It can get better, I promise.
yeah. It looks like Bev said working peptide therapy with Reagan. And so sorry he wasn't able to join us today. He's literally is in the air right now. He's coming to visit me, and this was the only flight time. He was trying to get it later so he could do the interview. He was pretty jealous that I got to
Oh,
be on here with you. So I feel really honored that I'm able to interview you today.
thank you.
But Bev said she's been working with Reagan a long time with her twitching hand. Bev, what peptide are you on with that? I'm curious if that's TB, thymosin beta 4. And that's so one thing we did with my mom. My mom was in, and sorry, we probably violate all sorts of HIPAA things. Sorry, mom. We have her approval to talk about her every once in a while. Um, but she was riding an e-bike and stopped, like the whole crowd stopped, and she just turfed it right onto her shoulder. And she's
Oh,
pretty petite, and has had some osteoporosis happening, which we've actually reversed. It's now osteopenia, but yeah, it like shattered her shoulder. And so she had to have this pretty complex surgery and pins and everything. So we had her doing thymosin beta 4 like the whole time through that process. And she's done some rehab, physical therapy. We've done some regenerative treatments there, and she's like doing awesome now. Full range of motion, 100%. Hasn't
oh,
even I don't even think it's been a year, and she's 70. How old's my? She turned 71 this year, so she's yeah, she's doing awesome.
no,
Uh,
good for her. That's wonderful.
yeah, so
Not wonderful that it
thymosin,
happened, but it's wonderful that
yes,
she's healing from it.
thymosin beta 4 is some. It's got some powerful stuff in it, and I guess that's what our body makes. Our bodies are powerful machines, but Yeah, it's nice to give it some extra boost. So Bev said, never broke anything, good cartilage in knees and joints. Long time riding endurance horse. Yes, Bev is, she's our horse racing
Uh-huh.
patient that just
Nice.
rocks it. Thanks for sharing, Bev. So we got about 5 more minutes, but I'm curious, um, uh, what do you recommend anything nutritionally or kind of lifestyle wise with peptide treatments? Anything in particular that you can share? Kind of the basics. Obviously, everyone I think is individualized, but maybe
Yeah.
share a little bit with the audience there.
Absolutely. To me, lifestyle is we've got these amazing peptides, but if we're just have a really toxic environment, it makes it hard for anything to work really well. I'm really gentle with my patients about making changes because I know that real change, you have to take little steps
Oh
and we
yeah,
have to meet them where they are, and then work little by little to get those ingrained into a better overall lifestyle. I do recommend intermittent fasting to almost everybody, unless they're obviously, an insulin dependent, brittle diabetic, then you're not going to have anybody fasting. But we're trying to not have that be the case. Intermittent fasting can give the body really, it gives that body what I believe we were meant to have is a period where we're consuming and then a period where we're utilizing, because we're such conservative creatures. Every time we eat something, some of it's being used and some of it's being stored. And if we
yeah,
never have a chance to mobilize what's stored and clean out the junk, when you fast, you start really getting efficient at cleaning out the stuff that doesn't need to be there. And that makes everything run better. And it makes everything run better as far as when your regenerative system is turned on. So that's a really great system that accompanies peptide therapy, in my opinion, is intermittent fasting. When it comes
love
to
it.
nutrients, I like people to really try to get rid of the processed foods. If they're not already eating organic food, I try to give them a little empowerment of why organic food is a better choice. And even if they only eat some things organic, that's better than no thing organic and grass-fed meat. And
Yeah,
just try to, the things that are available already that can help you have a healthier body in general. And then when it comes to supplements, I think that most of us are missing the boat with not using melatonin. We are breaking down our melatonin in the technological world that we live in, and we try to protect from the blue light, but most of us are not out in the full spectrum light from 7 to 9 a.m. where we can really try to rebuild that. It's just for working people and people in general, it just doesn't seem to be part of our lifestyle in America, is to go out there and ground and put your feet in the grass and absorb all that natural spectrum light. So having melatonin, because melatonin is really important. It's not just for sleep. It's actually used to help make dopamine in the brain. It's an antioxidant for the brain. It's super, super safe. It exists in every living organism on the planet. So I think that we're kind of missing the boat when we don't consume melatonin. And I use pretty big doses of melatonin after talking to the melatonin expert, which was really great. He wrote the books about melatonin, and we just use so much to help you with sleep, but the rest of it is helping with antioxidant activity in the brain. And vitamin
wow,
D3, every patient that I see who's not taking vitamin D3 is way deficient. It's an independent risk factor for all forms of
yeah,
cancer. It's more like a hormone in our body than a vitamin, and we need it for all these cellular reactions that we're trying to get to happen. So we need to have D3 in the optimal 75 to 100 range. So that's
perfect.
kind of a little
Love
smattering.
that. No, that was perfect advice. Had a question come in from Diane. How much melatonin are you using, and then whose book were you referring to, or the doctor or whoever?
It's Dr. Reichner. His book is actually on Amazon still. It was written in the 1990s, and
Nice.
he's probably close to 90 himself right now. But he's an amazing speaker and an amazing expert on melatonin. I usually take about 60 milligrams a day. Um, I usually recommend people start with 10 milligrams because it does cause some funky dreams for some folks, and you don't want to have funky dreams at 40 or 50 milligrams. You'd rather start understanding if that's going to happen at 10. And not all melatonin, not all melatonin is
Well,
created.
some people like those funky
Yes, some
dreams.
people do. They're not usually nightmares, you know, when people have them, but they can be very, very vivid and a little bit too much activity going on for some folks. They just don't seem to like
Yeah.
those funky dreams. But there's, you know, medical grade melatonin is a good idea. There was some research that was done like a Consumer Reports type of thing about most of the melatonin off the shelf. And I learned this from Dr. Reichner that a lot of the melatonin products don't have any melatonin in them. They have very, very little. So you want to have a product that you know and can trust. He actually said for over the counter, Natrol has a 10 milligram sublingual tablet, and I have no connection with Natrol whatsoever. But he was the one who said that they were the brand that when they tested them, they actually had 10 milligrams of melatonin in the tablet.
Wow.
So it's
Um,
always nice to tell people, well, where do I go to get it?
yeah, and
So yeah.
Bev asked, is there a way to test your melatonin? Yes, you can test that through salivary hormones, I know. I'm sure there's a blood test as well, but yeah, we can do that in the office, Bev. We have that capability. Appreciate you coming on the show today, and that was amazing conversation. I think we could probably go for another 2 hours
Yeah.
with different insights. We got to wrap up right now, but before we wrap up, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you that would like to?
Oh, yes. And I want to make sure they know about my little peptide guide that I'm giving you.
Yeah,
So the link is drheather.net/healthy self. That's the link. If you go to that link, you'll see my picture there, and it'll say it's an email opt-in. If you want the little PDF that's top 10 conditions that have been treated by peptides, you can select that, and it's free for you. It's yours free. And then it just gives you this kind of bigger picture of all the different conditions that are successfully treated with peptides. And I think it's kind of nice to know, especially if you're kind of new to the peptides and you really want to know what other peptides. I've got some really wacky, crazy, awesome peptides that most people don't know about on that list. And so, yes, so drheather.net, that's my website. You can contact me there if you'd like to. And then drheather.net/healthy self for your free gift. And it has been
awesome.
so great being here with you.
Oh shoot, I think your connection finally broke down.
Oh no.
It worked the whole time. We were having tech issues before we started, but all right, you're back. But thank you so much for joining us. For the audience, make sure to check out Dr. Heather, drheather.net/healthy self, and you can download the free
Healthy self. Yep.
PDF. Thank you once again,
Yes.
Dr. Heather, for joining us today. Amazing conversation.
Thank
We'll
you
be
so
back
much.
same time, same place next week. Love you guys. See ya.
Thanks again, guys. Bye.